Okay, it sounds like we're live. So a very warm welcome to our vector control community members listening in from across the Asia Pacific region, and in fact from across the world. I'll give some figures in a minute to give you an idea of how impressively strong the participation has been over the past couple of days. Very encouraging, really wonderful to see the level of interest that exists out there for what is actually a truly wonderful range of presentations by high-level speakers, very knowledgeable in their subjects that have been presenting to us over the past 2 days. So what I'd like to do is I'm going to give a quick overview, just what we've covered already and what we'll be doing today. So, Popo, can I share screen quickly? Thank you. Okay. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Thank you. All right. So it's our annual virtual conference of the APMEN Vector Control Working Group. It started on Monday, day one. It ran for almost 3 hours, but we had 6 speakers on day one with an excellent range of topics that were discussed. I'm not going to mention each by name, but really good presentations around the topic of outdoor biting, which is a very important topic, both in Asia Pacific and in Africa, and I'm sure in South America as well, but certainly here in Asia, outdoor biting is a very, very important challenge that we face. We had more than 500 participants on day one from 59 different countries listening in. Very impressive. Thank you for taking the time to listen into our conference. Day two, yesterday, was around border malaria or partnerships beyond boundaries. And we had 5 presentations there. Again, very high numbers of people listening in, 496, if I remember correctly, from 60 different countries. So again, excellent series of presentations, kind of targeting neighboring countries along a common border issues there. Today, we're going to target climate and environmental factors as it relates to malaria and sustaining malaria and trying to reach malaria elimination. So again, today we've got 4 presentations. I'm absolutely convinced they're going to be highly interesting. We look forward to that. I'll stop share screen. I just want to remind our audience of some of the technical aspects. So a number of you always ask, can we have access to the PowerPoint slides? So the full session is being recorded. It's being recorded in full, and it'll be made available on YouTube. Somebody, either Popo or Dr. Fawn, will post the URL in the chat box or in the Q&A box. So please keep an eye for that link because it seems to be that many people either would want to go back and re-look at some of the presentations, or they suggest to their colleagues and friends, here was a particularly interesting presentation, maybe you should watch it as well. So it is available, it's being recorded. The audience is muted and video off to reduce background noise. Apologies for that. It's just, it always happens if we make it live, then, there's a lot of people forget to mute the microphone and you get background noise and so on. So by default, we mute everyone. Apologies for that. Very important issue, please. if we're going to have several hundred people again listening in, if everybody puts their comments and I am so and so from such and such a country, plus the questions in the chat box, it makes it very difficult to separate out the question and ask the panelists to address the questions. So we welcome all those comments from all of you to say, hi, my name is such and such from such and such a country. We will absolutely welcome that to give us a sense of who's out there. But may I ask for the questions, please put your questions in the Q&A box. Ideally also, put in front of your question the name of the panelist that you would like to respond to your question. So if it's a question for Dr. Fay, then say Dr. Fay, and then put your question so we know that this is a question that Dr. Fay should address. Makes life a lot easier. Also, we're not going to interrupt we're going to have all the presentations back to back because many people in the audience can't wait for the full 2.5 hours to listen to all the presentations. So we do the presentations back to back so that as many people as possible can see the presentations. And then we have the Q&A session, questions and answer session, right at the end, after all the presentations have been completed. So I'm going to, I think that's it. Right at the very end, we also have a short poll. I think it's 3 questions, short questions, and it's multiple choice. You just need to tick whatever the appropriate answer is. It helps us understand, what are we doing right? What are we doing? What can we improve on in these webinars or learning events such as today? So I'd be very grateful if you can just respond to that poll questionnaire right at the end. This is not my show. It's actually your show. I say show with tongue in cheek, this event. The APMEN Vector Control Working Group works to serve you, our vector control community out there. And we hope you benefit from these presentations during our annual meeting, during our regular webinars. And we now also have some interest groups in addition to the working groups. And I'm going to hand over in a moment to Dr. Kimberly Fornas, who leads, is the chair for one of these interest groups, the one on climate and environment change. She's going to discuss that in a minute. But it's my absolute pleasure to hand over to Kimberly, who will be the moderator for this afternoon session. Just to mention, Dr. Kimberly Fornas is an associate professor and the head of the Climate, Environment, and Health program at the Soswi Hock School of Public Health at the National University of Singapore. Kimberly's research aims to understand and mitigate the impact of environmental change on infectious disease dynamics. Kimberly is also head of our APMEN Special Interest Group on climate and environmental impacts on malaria. And she's been very active in this particular role. So over to you, Kimberly. Thank you very much for being willing to moderate this session. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for everyone who's made time to be here. So I will just try to very briefly introduce the Climate and Environmental Change Working Group. It doesn't look like my slides are working. 1 second. Actually, so it doesn't look like my slides are working, so I will just talk through what we are doing. But for those of you who are not familiar, we recently set up the Climate, Environmental Change and Malaria Special Interest Group. And really our focus is thinking about what are the impacts of climate and other environmental changes on malaria, specifically in the Asia-Pacific region, but we do recognize this is a global issue. We want to better understand how malaria programs can adapt to a changing environment and think about what are some of the different adaptation measures that we can use. And we also want to think what are some of the opportunities for malaria control programs to mitigate climate and other environmental changes. So how can we increase sustainability in our own activities? So as part of this initiative, one of our kind of key objectives is to think about how we can better facilitate knowledge exchange among researchers and link up public health practitioners, people working on operational malaria control, as well as climate and environmental scientists. So I think we're very excited about the session today, as we'll have the opportunity to do this. We have a great range of speakers who will be talking from kind of how to implement malaria control all the way to climate modeling and thinking about how we can better use some of these epidemiological models to understand risk. So without further ado, I will introduce our first speaker who will be giving a partner update. This is Dr. Magendra Pal Singh, who has a PhD in health economics and is presently working as a program officer in epidemiology for the Foundation for Disease Elimination and Control of India. This is a not-for-profit organization of Sun Pharmaceutical Industries Limited. Dr. Singh also served in the ICMR, National Institute of Malaria Research in New Delhi, India, for over 35 years, working in the field of public health, and has a lot of experience to bring. So over to you, Dr. Singh.
Thank you very much, Kimberly and Dr. Leo. Thank you very much. Now I'm sharing my screen. My screen is visual?
Yes, it is perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. So this is I'm going to present here a study we have conducted, a malaria elimination demonstration project, MADP, which was conducted in District Mandla of Central India. District Mandla was one of the highly malarious districts in Central India. This study was conducted during the year 2017 and 2017 to 2021. The study was first kind of public-private partnership model in collaboration with Government of Madhya Pradesh, Indian Council of Medical Research, and Foundation for Disease Elimination Control of India. Here, I'm presenting a piece of work related to the integrated vector management and its impact on malaria elimination during the study. The background characteristics of the districts is the total geographical area is about 8,800 square kilometers spread over. Total number of the villages covered in this study was 1,233. The smallest unit of health service delivery is called health subcenters, and total health subcenters number is 297. The district population was 1.15 million. And this district is known as a tribal dominant district. The scheduled tribe population is about 60%. The terrain of the district is highly undulating, hilly and forested. Villages are surrounded with the perennial stream, and hamlets are scattered. The major crop in the district is paddy and maize. So this perennial stream provides the potential breeding sites for the vector. Total 14 Anopheles species has been reported during the study period. And Anopheles crucifixus is the abundant species. In the district, Anopheles crucifixus and Anopheles filatilis, these two are the major vectors in the district. The breeding habitats of the crucifixus is a slow-running stream, rocky bed pools, river bed pools, grassy margin of minor irrigation canal, rainwater pools and beds. Majorly, Anopheles filatilis breeds in slow-running stream in the forested area of the district only. The resting behavior of these vectors are mostly these vectors are endophilic, preferably in cattle shed. Cattle sheds are in the adjoining to the human dwelling, and the mixed dwelling also is there. Biting preference of these vectors are zoophilic and endophagic. The most of the biting hour are biting starts after 1 hour of from the sunset. Early night biter, these vectors. Peak biting hour has been reported 19 to 22 hour and in the early morning. Vector density study data, we found that most of the highest density was reported in the month of July for Anopheles crucifixus. And Anopheles filatilis are majorly we found in post-monsoon season. That is the October to February, October, November, December, and January, February. And the rest of the month, we did not found the Anopheles filatilis. Lowest density of crucifixus has been reported in the hot summer season, May month. Regarding the insecticide susceptibility status of these major insecticides, DDT, malathion, alpha-cypermethrin, and deltamethrin, it showed that DDT and malathion is resistant, found resistance in all the years. But alpha-cypermethrin we found in the year of 2017 that was possible resistant, which developed resistance in following years 19 and 2020. Deltamethrin was found susceptible, but it's also developed possible resistant in 2019 and resistant in 2020. In these tests has been conducted on deterministic dose of the insecticide. So we advise to conduct this same intervention, same investigation on 5x and 10x doses and continuous monitoring of this insecticide susceptibility test has been recommended. The post IRS test result was shown that the susceptibility after 1 day from the IRS was reported up to 98% mortality. But after 30 days of the post spring, this susceptibility was declined. We have conducted vector incrimination and we found that Anopheles crucifixus and Anopheles filatilis vector incrimination showing the positive one positive case has been reported in the please, somehow my presentation is shut off. I'm sorry, I'm just putting this.
Are you able to get it back or maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Excellent.
Well, at which point? Okay. I'm sorry for this. So Anopheles crucifixus we found positive in the month of October 19, So it's so that it supported our epidemiological picture also. The most of the highest malaria cases has been reported in post-monsoon season, start from September to September onwards. So it's thought that the transmission has this is the transmission month in the area. Regarding the sibling species composition, we found that the all sibling species of the crucifixes has been reported in the district, but highest number of the sibling species is from the C group, and the lowest in B. So before conducting taking some corrective measures, initially we started in our initial phase of the study. We have conducted some studies to identify the gaps in optimal utilization of existing health services, quality of service delivery, and efficiency of peripheral community health providers, supply chain commodities, and some operational challenges. So we found that the poor coverage of IRS due to many small regions, such as poor acceptance in the community, lack of coordination and supervision, poor quality of service delivery, poor health awareness in the community. Uh, it's our belief that no such any disease intervention get success without optimal acceptance in the community. Therefore, a need-based community mobilization, training of the staff for capacity building, and supervision of the work to assure the quality service delivery has been conducted. So these some tools we have developed to conduct carry out the community mobilization. First door-to-door visit with the interpersonal communication, and we have designed some health to provide the health awareness, to improve the health awareness. A calendar we have designed, and this calendar has been distributed to the each and every household in the district, and also placed in the public places. Middle school children and teacher also sensitized, and we think that these children may work as an agent of change. So we have conducted several training programs, several sensitization program in the school, theater-based activities and storytelling techniques have been adopted. And here in tribal districts, weekly market is in the area as a tradition. So people are coming in the weekly market to purchasing some their household stuffs. So we placed a IC and BCC booth has been installed in each rural area weekly markets, and we provided some on-spot diagnosis and treatment also, and IC material has been placed and distributed in the weekly market to sensitize the community. A flick book and poster also has been designed and placed to every public places. So with the impact of these community mobilization and supervision and capacity building of healthcare providers, we achieved some significant targets. The background of this IRS and LIN activity in the government system is with the API of 2 and up to 5, in the year of 2017-18, alpha cypermethrin was used for the IRS, and in the area where API is 1 to 2 in the 2019 and 20, this also spread alpha cypermethrin in IRS. In the year of 2017, greater than 5 API, and in the year of 2019, greater than 2 API, the area has been distributed, LLIN has been distributed in that area. MEDP monitored and supervised both the intervention IRS and LLIN distribution, and this uses to ensure the optimal use in the community, acceptance in the community in the year 2017 to 2020. And as a result, the preparedness of the spray, IRS spray has been improved by 70%. Correct methodology of spray is also improved, 50 to 90%, is a 40% improvement has been reported. A spraying technique is improved about about 26%. Improvement in the regular use of LLIN by the community has been improved about 28%, 34 before community mobilization, it was 34%, which has been improved by 62%. And outdoor sleeping is also improved very good in a way. Is 100% people are adopting using the LLIN when they are sleeping in the outdoor for the watching crop or some other reasons. Reduction in adverse event due to LLIN has been reduced by 64%. Increase in awareness about benefits of the regular use of LLIN has been improved by 97%. So with the effect of this taken some corrective measures and community mobilization, strict supervision, and some operational management, we were able to achieve the significant decline in the cases, malaria cases over the period. If you see here in the year of 2017, we found a lot of malaria cases which were gradually declined. So since 2017, the September, we started our actual field work, surveillance and demonstration work. Before this January to August period was preparation work. So since September 2017 to March 2021, this period was our intensive field work. Actively we worked there, and after that this period was post MEDP period. So during the post MEDP period 2021 to 23, out of 36 months of the post intervention period, 20 months has been reported 0 malaria cases. This is the is very significant achievement, and we found that this model has been sustained. We found sustained this model over the coming year. Even in the year of 2024, we are also watching the each cases in the district, which here we have not reported, but the cases are mostly found 0 malaria cases in this current year also. So this is the geospatial map is showing heat map showing the hottest spot of the malaria cases. If you see this in the year of 2016 map of the 2016, each segment is representing the health sub-centers, the smallest unit of health service delivery. So total out of 297 health sub-centers, 25% of the centers of the unit was malaria free in the year of 2016, which has been improved by 48% in the year of 2017, then 67%, 71%, 82%. And in the year of 2023, we found 97% of the units has been malaria-free units. So this is very significant achievement of this study. So in nutshell, I'm summarizing our presentation. Out of we have 14 anopheline species in the district. 2 species, mainly crucifixes, is abundant species, and another vector species, Anopheles filutilis, in a very small number. Significant higher vector density in July and lowest in month May. Vector density is almost similar in all the terrain, plain, foothill, forest, and hilly foothills. Anopheles crucifixes was resistant to DDT, malathion in every year, possible resistant to alpha-cypermethrin in the year of 2017, and developed resistant in year 2019 and 20. Susceptible, delta-methrin is susceptible in the year of 2017, but developed possible resistant in 2019 and resistant in 2020 at the deterministic dose. That bioassay test revealed 81 to 99% corrected mortality in crucifixes for the crucifixes on day 1 post IRS, and 35 to 62% after 30 days of the spraying. Anopheles crucifixes sibling species C is most prevalent, followed by AD, and lowest B species. Combination of integrated vector management along with robust disease surveillance, case management, community mobilization, capacity building has resulted in elimination of indigenous malaria cases in hard to reach tribal areas. Thank you very much. Let us make India malaria free. Thanks.
Fantastic. Thank you, Dr. Singh. That was an amazing presentation, a really huge accomplishment, and very exciting to see the really innovative ways of engaging the community. So if anyone has any questions, please do type them in the Q&A box and we'll get them to them at the end of all of the talks. So I would next like to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Mohammed Mukhtar. I think many of us know him very well as the co-chair of the Vector Control Working Group, but also the director of the Directorate of Malaria Control in Pakistan. And Dr. Mukhtar will be talking to us about his firsthand experiences of dealing with climate-related disasters. So over to you, Dr. Mukhtar.
Yeah, thank you very much, Kimberly. Can you share my slides? See my slides? Can you see my slides?
We see your
Yes.
slides. We see
Yeah.
your slides. Dr. Mukhtar, if you can just make full screen, please.
Yeah. Is it okay now?
No, not. There we go. Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Mukhtar. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to share our lesson learned from the flood 2022 in Pakistan and what are the challenges we face for the procurement of commodities, logistic, and change in the vector composition. This is very important, the change in vector composition. So we are sharing our best experience of dealing this natural disaster in Pakistan. Malaria situation in Pakistan, just a few words about it. Malaria is the second most prevalent disease in Pakistan after ARI. Out of total population of 235 million, Pakistan is a big country with the population of 235 million. 29% population in high-risk transmission areas, mainly in the western border with Iran and Afghanistan. However, 70% population live in the low transmission areas, mainly in eastern part like in Punjab. Every year, we reported 304,000 cases, 400,000 cases every year since 2021, out of which the 77% are the VIVEX. Main transmission season in Pakistan is August-November. However, we have the second peak in the March-April, which are actually the relapse cases of which are total 17 to 20% of total cases of the VIVEX. Pakistan definitely made some significant reduction in the malaria burden, 40% estimate cases reduction. according to WHO 2020 report, when we compare our case with 2015. In 2020-21, Pakistan developed its long-term strategic plan, which is targeting the malaria-free Pakistan. We call it Malaria Elimination Roadmap in 2021, and which is actually long-term strategic plan of the country, making the malaria-free Pakistan till 2035. In 2021, as I already mentioned, that 80% almost is a Vivex cases in the country. That's why the Pakistan also developed a Vivex-specific elimination roadmap in 2021. Pakistan, as a part of the Vivex elimination roadmap, Pakistan also developed a pilot project, G6 PD pilot project in 10 selected districts in the country in March 2024 through the support of MMV. Based on the lesson learned, this is a very important sentence of the last bullet of my slide. Based on the lesson learned, which we learned from flood 2022, Pakistan developed an immediate strategic plan 2023-2026, focusing the emergency response plan. As I mentioned that we developed a long-term strategy from 2021 to 2035. However, due to certain reason, this long-term strategy was totally silent if there is any natural disaster. So that's why after having the lesson learned of 2022 massive flood, we developed a baby strategic plan. I call it baby strategic plan because it's a baby of the bigger strategic plan, and which mainly focus the emergency response planning in the country. Malaria efforts in Pakistan, however, our efforts for malaria elimination was severely hammered by the devastating flood of 2022, when country received almost 200% more rains, leading to a devastating flood. Sindh and Balochistan, which are actually the malaria-affected provinces, received 340%, and Balochistan received 370% more rains. It is actually the consequence of the climate change. The few word about the climate change in Pakistan. Pakistan, you may know that Pakistan is the 5th most affected country with the extreme climate extremes. However, Pakistan's contribution for greenhouse gas emission is less than 1%, which means that we are paying the price for the deeds which we never committed. Pakistan is the 5th most affected country to the climate change, and the flood 2022 is the classic example of this climate change. After this flood, almost 65% of the country was affected, and almost 3 million people had to live in the temporary shelter, which was a big challenge for the program. About 13,000 kilometers and 450 bridges were damaged, impeding our access to the flood-affected areas, which is actually one of the reasons of rise of the malaria cases because of the less access to the affected communities. 1.16 million livestock loss, mainly in Balochistan, and this is also another proxy indicator that when we lost the huge livestock, the feeding preference of the mosquitoes may be towards the human when we lost these livestock, particularly in the Balochistan, which is highly endemic province for the malaria. 2,000 health facilities were damaged. Due to flood, there was a marked rise of malaria cases, particularly in Sindh and Balochistan province, and we reported 3.1 million confirmed cases in 2022 after the flood, while we have 375,000 cases in 2021. Country definitely reached a state of emergencies, and outbreak recognized as the heaviest resurgence over the last 50 years in the country. National and international experts expected that extended and intense transmission even after 2022, which is very much clear that in 2023 we have 2.91 million cases, and till September 2024 we have 2.6 million cases, which actually shows that the consequences of the floods, and we are facing still the problem of these floods. And this is just the slide which I'm just showing. If you look at the number of the cases in the month of August, when we have the state of emergency, when we compare the result of the January, we have only 10,000 January 2022. When we compare this, it's more than 100,000, which indicate that after the flood, there was a very big rise of the malaria cases, and definitely country was in the state of emergency. And And this shows the positivity rate in the provinces, which reach to the particularly in Sindh and Balochistan, which are already malaria affected. The test positivity rate reached to almost 40%. It's a huge rise in 2022. Now, what are the first challenge was change of the vector species composition after flood. Country reported, we have historically reported 24 Anopheline species in Pakistan, out of which only Culici facie has been reported as a confirmed malaria vector in the country. However, with Stephensii reported as a secondary vector. Some old studies, early 70s and 80s, this species considered as also urban malaria vector. We definitely have a suspected vector, particularly Anopheles fluviatilis. As one of my colleagues from India already mentioned that this is a major vector of the fluviatilis in India. Definitely, we also have some issues with the fluviatilis, particularly in the Balochistan, and then maculatus and annularius and pulcharimus. This pulcharimus was on our radar first time in 1972. This species was first time reported on large scale in 1968, and then in 1972 it was start conceding maybe it playing some role in malaria transmission in the central Punjab. However, during the flood in 2022, when we have a joint field investigation involving the National Malaria Control Program, WHO expert from Geneva and Amro region, provincial and district malaria team was conducted during the September-October in two provinces, Sindh and Balochistan, and some part of the Punjab. During the field investigation, surprisingly, there was zero population of the primary vector, traditionally believed Anopheles culici, while zero population was reported, while on the other hand, we have 30 times more malaria cases in the same areas. Only 1% sample were positive Anopheles stephensii, while the culici was totally absent. And 98.7% sample of mosquito sample were identified as Anopheles pulcharimus. This situation raised some very interesting question. In the absence of the culici, which mosquito species is spreading malaria in flood-affected areas of the country? Is the flood water washed away the culici and replaced with the other species like pulcharimus? Is the climate change replaced the culici with this pulcharimus? Is this replacement is permanent, or this replacement only in the flood-affected areas and other part of the country? If it is true, then there should be some population of the culici would be there in these flood-affected areas. I just give you a historical review of the paper. In 2004, we wrote a paper, Malaria Vector in Changing Environment on Southern Punjab, Pakistan. This paper, if you download from internet, it was internationally published. This paper revealed the reason of the low malaria transmission in Punjab with justification of replacement of Anopheles culici with Anopheles stephensii. Here is a very important statement. The stephensii definitely is a very big important vector in our neighboring countries. But in Pakistan, historically, we have not a concrete evidence this is a major vector of malaria in Pakistan, and this was evident in the Punjab in 2004 when we have a comprehensive analysis of the country data for last 60 years of the environment data, climate data, and the groundwater, different parameters. This shows that the mainly stephensii culici was replaced by stephensii mainly attributed by the large-scale ecological changes that is surface water becomes saline, which provide the breeding ground for the stephensii. You know that stephensii has a wide range of tolerance to different geo-environmental conditions as well as the water characteristic for basis. It's a saline resistant species, but on the other hand, culici can't tolerate the high salinity level in country. Field investigation 2023-24 also revealed that pulcharimus is still there. We have the comprehensive analysis of the data of 2023, particularly in the Punjab and some part of the Sindh, that the pulcharimus is still there. So this is a very interesting change in the species composition after the flood in the country. Key lesson learned. My key lesson learned mainly based on our ITN campaigns during 2022 when there were large-scale flood. We have the challenge that we have the planned a big campaign of the mosquito net distribution 2022, all of a sudden there was a flood in the country. So we have a very big lesson learned, which are actually the lesson learned for the other countries, that if there is you have the campaign and what are the best of the best vector control intervention under humanitarian emergencies. We are very thankful to the Global Fund for a wonderful support during this 2022 flood, and as well some other partners who have provided, like the UNICEF and some other partners, which give a huge support to the country to deal this situation, because you know that this big magnitude of the humanitarian crisis was such a big, it was not possible for the country, for the program alone to respond this successfully. My first key principle is that the key principle in success human disaster management is speed of the response. How quickly you respond to this humanitarian crisis. In 2022, we developed, as I already mentioned, that we developed an emergency response plan for the malaria and other vector-borne disease in consultation of all stakeholders, addressing all strategic, operational, and financial need under humanitarian emergencies. Because I already told that in our long-term planning of malaria elimination was silent on the humanitarian emergency response. That's why we immediately developed keeping with the first lesson from this humanitarian emergency, which developed our emergency response plan. If God forbid, if there is another emergency in the country, what should be the best strategy to control that emergency? Then coordination among all stakeholders and partners for data sharing and evidence-based. This is being a program, this was the big challenge for the country, because the different partners were doing a wonderful job. UNICEF, Global Fund, different partners for giving a wonderful support to the country, but there was a lack of coordination, which resulted in the duplication of the resources and some missing of the areas where there was actual need, but the partner has no data that where they should go. So that's why the coordination among the all stakeholders was of the biggest challenge, biggest lesson learned from this humanitarian emergency. Local procurement, maintaining the quality standard and the consultation of the national authorities and local procurement as humanitarian emergency response. During 2022 humanitarian emergency, it was mandatory for the National Malaria Control Program to receive commodities internationally, which normally takes 6 months to reach. However, during the emergency, program must be allowed to procure locally, ensuring all quality standards. Note, National Disaster Management Authority also procured 2 million mosquito nets from local market. You may know that Pakistan has one of the best industry producing the locally produced WHO pre-qualified mosquito net in the country. However, due to certain reasons, which we were receiving the mosquito net from the other countries, which actually make a delay in our response. So this is another big lesson learned. Scenario specific intervention, very interesting. As a vector control specialist, this is the most interesting challenge for me, that we must have this scenario specific intervention, like the indoor residual spray versus ITN, rectangular bed net or conical bed net. As I already mentioned that during this humanitarian emergency, 68% population was living in tents and temporary shelters. If you look at this picture, the people are living in the small tents where it was difficult to provide the mosquito net. And you can see that here, you can see that more than 100 people are living in a small hall of any government building, where the hundreds of people were residing were provided just a sleeping place or food for eating purpose. Everybody has the mosquito net through the Global Fund support, but unfortunately they can't use it because it was not possible to install the bed net in this limited place. So this was another challenge. Then solution was that we must have the indoor residual spray option as well. Then conical. The people who were living in the rectangular shaped small tents, they must be used, they provided the conical nets. So conical net is a best strategy in the humanitarian emergencies, but no partners promoting this conical bed net just because of slight rise of the price. But it is not more expensive than a human life. So this is very important that the conical bed net should also be promoted in the humanitarian emergencies. And then partner program partner donors should be flexible in selection of intervention, particularly in case of humanitarian. I think I explained this point very well in my above 2 points. Then finally, key lesson, backup supply. This is very important. That because when the people from they were returning to their home after this humanitarian emergency, most of the people lost their bed net during not taking care properly. That's why there should be some more supply of the mosquito, but here the domestic resources should be the priority. So we should have the domestic resources to provide the more backup supply for these people and proving IT and repellents as a relief food package. When you give the relief package to the people, the repellents and ITN should be the part of that relief package. Deployment of the new and other vector control intervention under humanitarian emergency per fogging operation. People normally call it is a political intervention. It's not a political intervention. It's a technically very effective under humanitarian emergencies, but we don't recommend it as a routine intervention for malaria control, but only for the emergency response. Promotion of the repellents, and the NGOs were encouraged to provide the repellents to the IDPs. Chlor treatment. We have a very good experience when there were Afghan refugees in Pakistan in the 90s and the flood in 2010. We have very good experience of chlor treatment, and there are many studies published on the chlor treatment particularly for Afghan refugees. Use of the non-chemical larvicide, because when there was a flood, we discouraged the use of the chemical in the flood waters, because people were even used for those flood water even for drinking purpose, and we don't know the final destination of this. That's why we discourage the use of chemical, but we encourage the use of the non-chemicals like the BTI, and BTI is getting very good popularity in the country now in Pakistan. Local Drug Regulatory Authority need to have a mechanism for fast-tracking registration for unregistered pharmaceutical in the country, or issue a one-time waiver as a response of disaster management. Because there were many pharmaceuticals, insecticide donation was ready to launch in the country, but due to non-registration, so that's why we took the Drug Regulatory Authority of Pakistan on board that there should be a fast-track registration of the unregistered product in the country to cover this challenge. And this is a global recommendation, global lesson learned. There should be a global mechanism, maybe under WHO, to have a commonly used vector-borne disease prevention material and drugs as a stockpile. This mechanism should be registered and approved by each member country by its drug regulatory authority, so that supplies can be quickly transferred and accepted to any country where there is any natural disaster. These stockpiles could be under the WHO, are funded by the donors and developed countries. So this is a picture we show that we are doing the fogging operation and other things which are highly effective under the emergencies. But it is my message that it is not recommended as a routine intervention. Therefore, what increase ownership by the national and provincial government, which means that there should be some domestic resources as well when there is a natural disaster. Time and target specific intervention to collaborative approach with all stakeholders. As I already mentioned, that coordination is very important. All the partners have the commodities, but unfortunately, due to lack of coordination, there was delays and there was many challenges, that delays as well as the duplication of the resources. And there should be bottom to up planning rather top to down, so that we can engage the community. Every partner should be involved in the partner in the planning phase. Engage with the partners and donors for efficient resource management and promote the localization health program and projects. Removal of softening of some policy barriers, which I already explained in the point of the Drug Regulatory Authority. Then finally, increase the flexibility and partnership. The impact of the activities would balance the risk. There should be the flexibility in the partnership. Contingency plan, of course, must have the contingency plan if there is some natural disaster in the country. Simplified the financial and programmatic reporting templates This is also another important, and which we had a lot of lesson on this. And then corporate social responsibility as a source of financing that has neither been fully established and not fully tapped. So these are the way forward, which are our less based on our lesson learned for this natural disaster. So thank you very much for your kind attention.
Thank you, Dr. Mukhtar. That was a fantastic presentation, and I think really very clear example of the impacts of extreme weather events and the need to prepare. So there's a lot we can all learn from how Pakistan has responded to that. So just to remind everyone, if you have any questions for Dr. Mukhtar, please put them in the Q&A box below. And following on from Dr. Mukhtar's presentation on kind of facing and responding to the impacts of climate change and climate change-driven natural disasters, our next speaker will be telling us a bit more about climate modeling work in the region and thinking about how we can use some of this climate information to hopefully support this planning and other activities. So I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Faye Cruz, who is a climate scientist and the head of Regional Climate Systems Laboratory at the Manila Observatory in the Philippines. She is also currently the co-chair of Cordex Southeast Asia. With her experience in regional climate modeling, she has worked on transdisciplinary projects to provide enhanced climate change information for climate change adaptation and disaster risk reduction. Dr. Cruz was also a lead author in the IPCC AR6 Working Group 1. So we're very grateful for your time and grateful for the opportunity to engage more with the climate science community. So over to you, Dr. Cruz.
Thank you, Dr. Kimberly, and good afternoon to all. So as mentioned in the introduction, I am coming from the climate research community, and so I thank you for your kind invitation to share with you this afternoon our ongoing regional climate modeling initiatives, specifically by Cordex Southeast Asia. So as we know, Southeast Asia is a region at high climate risk to climate change. The region consists of mostly least developed and developing countries with an agricultural economy that makes it sensitive and vulnerable to climate extremes such as floods, droughts, and typhoons. As in other parts of the world, records have indicated increasing extreme weather events, which have most of which are actually floods and storms in Southeast Asia, and these have resulted in significant loss of lives and damages. And so it is important that we have a comprehensive risk assessment to help climate and disaster risk reduction efforts and adaptation strategies. Key to these efforts would be access to high-resolution regional climate projections and information projections of future temperature, rainfall, and other climate variables are available from global climate models, but these typically have low or coarse spatial resolutions, which can be a bit problematic for areas such as Southeast Asia because of its complex topography. At low spatial resolutions, terrain and land use are not well represented, and so it's difficult to see the impacts of terrain and land use on local climate change from these models. And so, and also if you have small islands, it may not be as well represented in the global models. So in these past decades, the regional climate modeling community has been working towards generating high-resolution climate data from these global climate projections through downscaling techniques. There have been independent downscaling efforts at the country scale and some initiatives at the regional scale, but there are limitations, such as the use of a single regional climate model that makes it hard to estimate model uncertainty. Ideally, these climate projections would come from multiple models and from multiple scenarios to cover a range of plausible futures. And it is also important to have localized and contextualized climate information so that it is more useful and more relevant. So we are trying our best to increase engagement with the vulnerability, impacts, and adaptation community and also with decision makers so that together we can co-create climate knowledge. However, this can be too much to do for a single group, especially with limited resources, time, and personnel. So in response, in 2013, climate scientists from Southeast Asia have come together to collaborate under the Southeast Asia Regional Climate Downscaling Coordinated Regional Climate Downscaling Experiment, or CORDEX Southeast Asia, with funding from the Asia-Pacific Network for Global Change Research and grants from within member institutions and countries. The CORDEX Southeast Asia project aimed to produce high-resolution, multi-model, multi-scenario projections, enhance the scientific understanding of regional climate change, as well as facilitate networking and capacity building of climate scientists, researchers, and students. And what started out from around 5 institutions eventually increased to 20 institutions from 14 countries, both within and outside Southeast Asia. In this project, multiple climate simulations were done on a task-sharing basis to address constraints in resources. Together, we have been able to downscale climate projections until 2100, a 25-kilometer resolution for Southeast Asia, using a number of regional climate models for 2 emission scenarios. From these projections, we have been able to get detailed information on the spatial patterns of future temperature, seasonal changes in rainfall, and so on. And climate extremes can also be better captured. Analyzing future changes in climate extremes are important because of their pronounced impacts on ecosystems and communities. For example, we see more frequent dry spells and heavy rainfall days in Southeast Asia under a 2-degree global warming level. Downscaling multiple models also provides information on the significance and robustness of these climate changes. This information has then contributed to a more robust assessment of climate change in the region, as reported in the IPCC 6th Assessment Report. Future warming in the region will be slightly less than the global average. Extreme heat events will become more intense and more frequent. Rainfall will generally increase in northern parts of Southeast Asia, whereas summer rainfall is projected to decrease in areas of the maritime continent. Extreme precipitation and flooding will become more frequent and more intense. And regional mean sea level will also be higher over longer time periods and for higher emission scenarios. But the level of increase depends on the region. And with higher sea levels, coastal flooding can be more frequent and more severe in low-lying areas. In phase 2 of the CORDEX Southeast Asia project, 3 global climate models using 2 RCP scenarios were downscaled to 25-kilometer resolution for Southeast Asia, and then further downscaled to 5 kilometers to 4 key vulnerable areas in the region, which we identified as Peninsular Malaysia, Mindanao, Lower Mekong Basin, and Java Island. As an example, the 5-kilometer climate data for Peninsular Malaysia shows a future decrease in seasonal mean precipitation, regardless of the emission scenario. Furthermore, consecutive dry days are expected to increase, which indicates a long dry spell in the future. Many areas may also have fewer days with very heavy rainfall, but there are still areas where very heavy rainfall days will become more frequent. High-resolution climate information combined with local information on exposure, vulnerability, and adaptive capacity can help decision makers understand their risk profile to plan appropriately and, more importantly, to avoid maladaptation. As an example, Thailand used the projections of heat to combine with socioeconomic data to derive a risk score, for example, to assess the risk of the elderly to the heat hazard per province. And so we have not yet done studies using this information with vector-borne diseases, but this climate data could be used as input for epidemiological models for malaria and other vector-borne diseases. CORDEX Southeast Asia continues these climate downscaling efforts with ongoing work in downscaling the CMIP6 global model projections for the region, prioritizing the very low emission scenario, the SSP1 2.6, and the moderate emission scenario, SSP 3.7. We have also started another APN-funded project, which is the Climatic Hazard Assessment to enhance resilience against climate extremes for Southeast Asian megacities, or the Care for Sea Megacities project. This aims to generate city-scale climate information from the downscaled CMIP6 climate projections of CORDEX Southeast Asia, to help enhance the resilience of the megacities under a globally warmer future. This project also brings together and aims to develop the expertise of this region on both dynamical and statistical downscaling, urban climate research, and engagement with policymakers and other end users. The downscaled climate data using the RCP scenarios are now publicly available and hosted in the Southeast Asia Regional Climate Change Information System, or the SARCSIS, and I invite you to visit this website and explore the tools available here. Before I end, in case helpful, climate data can also be accessed and visualized using the IPCC Interactive Atlas, as shown here. And recently, Singapore has released the third National Climate Change Study, or the V3, which provides not only the 2-kilometer resolution projections for Singapore, but also the 8-kilometer resolution projections for Southeast Asia using the recent SSP scenarios. I understand that the data portal will also be launched early next year, so I invite you to also wait for updates on that. So thank you very much for your attention, and I look forward to the discussions. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Dr. Cruz. I think it's just really exciting to see all the work that's done in the region. And I think there's a huge opportunity to think about how we can link some of the regional expertise in climate modeling with the work that's ongoing in malaria, to really think about how do we use these types of projections and new data sources to better target and plan our malaria control programs. And of course, we've seen kind of some of the major impacts this does have on vector-borne diseases. So if anyone has a question for Dr. Cruz, please add this to the Q&A box. And I will move on to our next speaker, who will give us a bit of an overview of some of the ways we can think about actually combining disease data from vector-borne diseases and climate information. And so I'm very pleased to introduce Dr. Emily Finch, who is a postdoctoral researcher in the Pathogen Dynamics Unit at the University of Cambridge. Her research focuses on developing mathematical and statistical models to understand the drivers of viral transmission, assess future epidemic potential, and evaluate the impacts of interventions. So, Dr. Finch, I will hand over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for that introduction. Just checking that my slides have appeared okay for everyone online.
Yep, they look good.
Okay, great. Okay, so thank you very much for inviting me to give this presentation. Today, I'm going to be discussing some work that I led outlining stages for developing early warning systems for vector-borne diseases, particularly covering engagement, methods, and implementation. So this work really sits at the intersection of climate services and epidemiological modeling. Climate-informed early warning systems are designed to integrate climate data to then predict infectious disease outbreaks. And the timescales for the forecasts might range from short-term predictions, so on the scale of weeks, to seasonal or medium-term projections on the scale of months. And ideally, these systems are then linked to response actions. So they'll contain a model that will create a forecast of incidence or risk, and this will then be linked to actions in an anticipatory action framework, such as the timing of vector control, options to enhance surveillance, or to increase hospital capacity. And while the use of early warning systems is very established in other fields, so the prediction of natural hazards for disaster risk reduction, or the prediction of food security risk in the humanitarian sector, the integration of climate early warning systems within the health sector is limited to date, and there are few operationalized tools, despite quite a lot of academic research in this area. So in this work, we outlined 5 key stages involved in the development of an early warning system for vector-borne diseases. And to do this, we drew on insights from the epidemic forecasting community, as well as from researchers and institutions working on the application of climate services for health. So the first stage that we highlighted is engagement. Building a functional early warning system is a complex transdisciplinary process, and co-creation is an important central component to development, particularly between tool developers and decision makers or ultimate end users of the tool. Building these strong partnerships is important to build trust and shared ownership in an early warning system, which are crucial to the system's ultimate implementation and usefulness in informing public health action. Part of this initial co-creation process is identifying the problem. So what is the most useful and policy relevant question that could be answered with a climate-informed early warning system? And then how can this be aligned with a model output or a forecast target? So is it useful for a model to try and predict the peak cases in a season, the timing of a season, or something like the probability of exceeding an outbreak threshold? Defining these targets clearly at the outset of the process is then also best practice methodologically, as it allows for a rigorous statistical validation of the predictive accuracy of the forecast later down the line. The second stage that we've outlined is conducting a feasibility study, which we break down into 3 components. Firstly, assessing resources. It's important to consider how an early warning system might be integrated into national programs from the outset. Who will be responsible for running routine forecasts and communicating output? Ideally, early warning systems will be based on data that's readily available and updated regularly. So, for instance, local meteorological station data or epidemiological data. The second step in this feasibility study is to assess the evidence for the climate health linkages of relevance. So not all climatic indicators are relevant for all settings and for all vector-borne diseases. While the most commonly used variables in these kinds of models are often temperature and rainfall, other weather information such as absolute and relative humidity, wind speed, temperature ranges, or other indicators such as the standardized precipitation index have also proven useful in previous forecasting models. It's also important here to consider important non-climatic drivers that might be useful, such as information on environmental factors, population immunity, or behavior. And then the final component here is data availability. So once there's a good understanding of what climatic or non-climatic indicators might be relevant in a setting, it's important to consider the different data products available and their associated geographical and temporal resolution. The sharing of data sets between partners is often a common barrier in the development of early warning systems, particularly between the climate and health departments. So the next step then is tool development, which includes data processing, model building, and model validation. Forecasting tools include mechanistic, statistical, and machine learning approaches. Historically, the use of very complex, particularly Bayesian statistical models or mechanistic models has been limited because of long computational time. However, in recent decades, techniques such as Markov chain Monte Carlo and growing computational capacity have allowed us to consider more complex model structures for routine early warning systems. Each class of forecasting model comes with associated advantages and disadvantages, and ensemble modeling approaches, where you combine insights from many component models, offer the potential for improved predictability and also better characterized uncertainty. Then finally, in terms of model validation, once a forecasting model has been developed, it's best practice to test its performance either on out-of-sample data, which has been withheld from the end of a time series being considered, or using cross-validation techniques. So moving on to implementation, currently many proposed early warning system forecasting models are entirely academic. However, it's important to consider from the outset how an early warning system might be handed over from model developers to public health authorities and those responsible for long-term maintenance, development, and interpretation of the model. Early warning systems will be unhelpful unless they catalyze action through risk communication. And the question of how best to communicate model outputs to stakeholders and the general public requires careful consideration. Different levels of risk warning can then be associated with different response actions, so ranging from increased vector response, public communication campaigns, or preparations around hospital capacity. And these will need to take into account both the model output and then also the uncertainty around that model output. And then finally, any early warning system should be continually evaluated and updated to reflect the changing risk of vector-borne disease in a setting. The frequency of false alarms, where the model might predict an outbreak and one is not seen, and the frequency of missed events, where the model doesn't predict an outbreak and one is seen, are two important errors in an early warning system that should be closely monitored. So I thought that I would illustrate some of these points with a case study of some work that we did looking at forecasting dengue in Singapore for early warning. So as many of you, I'm sure, are aware, Singapore experiences hyperendemic dengue transmission, as well as large intraannual epidemics, which you can see here in a time series of dengue cases. And a key question and challenge for early warning systems is how to predict when these large outbreak years will occur. So we were looking at two hypothesized drivers of intraannual outbreak risk. The first were changes in the dominant serotype. So here you can see serotype prevalence underneath the time series of dengue cases. And you can see often that there's a temporal correlation between large outbreaks and switches in the dominant serotype, initially between dengue 1 and dengue 2, and then most recently to dengue 3. And a second important interannual driver is the Niño 3.4 index, so the El Niño Southern Oscillation, with outbreaks sometimes occurring during El Niño events. We used a Bayesian hierarchical modeling approach where we found that climate and serotype dynamics both shaped dengue risk with nonlinear and delayed effects. We found increased risk of dengue at around 32 degrees Celsius for the maximum temperature, also at intermediate levels of rainfall and in El Niño conditions. And then we also found increased relative risk of dengue in the first 2 years after a switch in the dominant serotype, followed by a period of decreased risk, and then increased risk again at very long time intervals since the switch in the dominant serotype. We then adapted this model to produce probabilistic forecasts of dengue from 2 to 8 weeks ahead. And here I've shown forecasts for 4 weeks ahead and for 8 weeks ahead. And I've compared 3 candidate models. So on the top row, there's the full model with climate and serotype covariates. The second row, there's a climate-only model, so only including the climatic covariates. Then a serotype-only model, so only including the serotype information. And then finally, a seasonal baseline for comparison. So this only includes the seasonal pattern of transmission. As expected, the predictive ability was better at shorter lead times, with increasing uncertainty at longer lead times. However, all 3 of these covariate models were able to capture the broad dynamics between 2009 and 2022 and offered considerable improvement over a seasonal baseline. And overall, we found that accounting for serotype dynamics as well as climate improved our case prediction at lead times up to 6 weeks ahead and improved our prediction of outbreaks at all forecast horizons. And this model is now being integrated within an ensemble modeling framework running routine dengue forecasts for Singapore within the National Environment Agency in Singapore, who we co-developed this project with from the outset. So just briefly, I would like to thank my co-authors on the early warning system work that I presented, as well as my PhD supervisors, Adam Kucharski and Rachel Lowe, and my collaborators at the Environmental Health Institute at the NEA, as well as my funders. And these 2 QR codes on the screen will take you to a book chapter on the work that I presented in the first half of this talk around the development of early warning systems, and then to a preprint summarizing the dengue forecasting work in Singapore. Thank you very much for your attention.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Dr. Finch. I think that was a really nice example to bring it all together about how we use the vector data, how we can use the climate data, and also really the importance of engaging the end users. So I know Dr. Mukhtar presented some really nice examples of ways in which, key measures which need to be taken and ways in which a program would need to be prepared and how they could potentially use some of these systems. So if anyone has any questions for Dr. Finch, please add them to the Q&A button below. And Leo, did you want to take over?
Yeah, thank you, Kimberly. Thank you so much for excellent moderation. So I think our audience members, you agree, fascinating series of presentations there. extremely important information they shared there, which just tells us again, as if we need further reinforcement, that climate change is a reality. It's unstoppable, it's happening, it's going to continue, and it will impact us here in Asia Pacific. You can't hide from it wherever you are on the globe. Climate change is going to hit you one way or another. So I found it interesting that there was an indication that there will be fewer extreme weather events like the Pakistan flood, but they will be more severe when they do happen. So, Dr. Mukhtar, you got problems coming your way with the next flood, it would seem. And we should all take that lesson seriously and prepare based on the predictions that are coming our way now from the experts. So I'm going to ask our audience to please be patient. Don't leave us. We need your help. We're going to have an very interesting little exercise before we go to the Q&A session. We are going to get to your questions, I promise you. But before we go there, we're going to ask your help, please, everyone in the audience, to help us to identify what are the research needs that we here in Asia Pacific or anywhere in the world for that matter, what are the research topics that we need to address in relation to climate change and environmental change as it affects vector-borne disease? And as Emily pointed out, it's not just malaria, but also importantly, arboviruses, dengue being a prominent example because it's already on a rise, on the increase. So we're going to ask you, respected audience members, please to help us to identify what are the questions we need to address to understand better and to respond to these climate events and environmental changes that are occurring that affect our vectors, our disease incidence, and human lives in the region in terms of our exposure and impact to these climate changes. So Popo is going to put up on the screen a QR code. And I'm going to ask, when you're ready, Popo, if you can share that QR code. You need to go, you can either punch into Google www.slido.com and then insert the code 4266433 there. That will take you to your PC, the Slido platform. Or much easier is just to take your cell phone. Where's my cell phone now? Here on the screen. Anyway, so, and then using your camera, point your camera at the QR code. It's going to show a link there on your screen. Just tap that link, and then a Slido window will come up. It's going to say questions closed for a few seconds. Give it time, and then there will be a drop-down list which says, which country are you from? It's to give us an indication of where are your different answers coming from in terms of geography across the planet. So scroll down, select the country that you are from, and tick that, tap on that particular country. If you scroll down further, please don't do anything yet, other than tick your particular country. You'll see there are some example questions relating to climate related questions and so on. These are just some ideas that we pre-populated the list to give you a sense of the kinds of questions that we were looking for you to help us identify. Go through that list of questions if you don't mind. And then at the bottom of that list, there's a little box, the very last one of that range of options. It says others. If you tap that box, it goes blue and you get a right mark there. Then you can enter, if you scroll just a little bit further, 3 empty boxes. You get 3 opportunities to list your suggestions, your ideas of what research topics we should be looking at. So in each of those boxes, please put one idea. And you don't need to tick anything else on. When you're finished with the one box, go to the second box, write in some more ideas, one more idea, then go to the third box. Once you've finished with your third idea, tap the green box that says send, and it'll send, and Popo will then harvest all your responses collectively. Slido, the system, will aggregate all those responses and show us what are the additional ideas. Once we've given everybody an opportunity to submit their ideas, we're going to give you a few minutes to do that. So take your time. You've got 3 boxes to put your individual ideas. And please put them in. It's going to come into the aggregate pool. Once everybody has done that, Slido is going to kick us out again. And then we have to re-link again. Then the real interesting part comes, because then you have to vote. We'll each vote. We can read through the different topics that have now been aggregated. It takes into account everybody's suggestions, and it puts it down there as a list. We can read through it. And then you can tap on the top 3 priorities, read through the list. When you've finished going through the list, then go back and select what you think is the most important one. And you tap on that one, and that option will jump to the top. Then you can go through the list again, and you select what is the second most important topic in your opinion. You tap on that one, it will jump to the second slot. And so with this third one too, tap on the third most important topic in your opinion, and it'll jump to number 3. Slido will collate all the responses and show us what we as a group, what we consider to be the top 3 most important research topics that we should be looking at. Please, none of us are probably expert climatologists or environmentalists like Kimberly and Emily and Faye. So don't think you don't have a valid opinion. We're all vector control people. We know that rainfall or droughts or changes in standing water or temperatures, whatever, impact our vectors, and there are certain information aspects that we need. So give your opinion, whatever it is. Nothing's stupid, nothing's not relevant. Just put your ideas down there. It would be great. So Popo, just prompt us when we should be going back into Slido again, please. Popo, I was so busy talking, I didn't keep track of what's on the screen. So just tell me when we should rescan and go back. Okay, it seems like Slido system is still busy harvesting all the ideas. They're still coming in. So we're not quite ready for voting yet. Slido is still gathering all the ideas. Sorry, I'm talking so much. So we're going to give it a few more minutes so that everybody can submit their ideas for research topics. And Slido is busy gathering all those ideas. And it will, I think Slido looks at certain keywords that overlap, and then it harvests what are the topics that correspond with each other, and makes it into, you know, one kind of cluster. And so you get multiple of these clusters based on the keyword grouping. Some wonderful ideas coming up here. Looks good. While we're waiting, may I extend a very sincere word of thanks to Emily, Faye, Dr. Mukhtar, Dr. Mrigendra, for your respective expert talks. Wonderful presentations, very valuable, many insights and lessons for us to heed. Thank you for your time and effort in putting together those presentations. As an audience, we are grateful for your time. All right, so now we're ready. If you can rescan this QR code, it will take you back into Slido, and then you'll see the list, the aggregated list of research questions that we've all contributed to. Your ideas will somehow be embedded in that list as well. So we're going to give it a little bit of time to give you opportunity to scan. Okay, so I think on your screen now, you should see all the different research topics pop up, and then read through them to get a sense of what they are. And then you can go back and tick or tap on the top three. Remember, the first one you tap on will jump to the #1 position. That is what you think is the top priority. The second one you tap on will be your second priority, and the third one you tap on will be your third priority. You only get three opportunities. So they're all clearly listed there. Long list of different research topics. Tap on the 3 that you think are the most important research topics we should be looking at, and press send. Once you've done all 3, press send. Right at the bottom there's a green little oval. Tap on that and your ideas will go through, and Slido will then aggregate everybody's votes and tell us which top three, and in fact, it's going to give us more than three, but it's going to give us the top three, and then also show us the other rankings for the other ideas. Very interesting. Gideon, I see you're struggling to access Slido. I'm sorry, my friend. I think just join in and see what the majority votes are, because it's going to be interesting. Gideon, so I suspect you have your cell phone with you. Just go to your camera. You go to your camera app, hold it over hover it over the QR code on the screen there, top left, and it should bring up a link on your cell phone screen. And if you tap that, it's going to take you to Slido. And then you should be able to see the full list, and then you can vote your top three. Mohammed, you seem to have the same problem. Again, use your cell phone, go to your camera app, hold your cell phone screen fairly close to the QR code, and you'll see your camera lock in on that QR code. A URL will show up on your cell phone screen. Just tap that, wait a few seconds, and it will take you to the Slido screen. And this is what you should see now. This is now the integrated list that reflects everybody's rankings. Everybody now voted for 3 topics. Slido has taken your votes and put it together into a collective output. And it's ranking it from number 1 to number 14. So Slido is still busy collecting some outstanding votes. We're still giving a few minutes for Slido to collect the votes from everyone. So I'm very impressed by our audience patience. There's still 294 of you linked in, and please stay with us. You're going to enjoy the Q&A session. I mean, this is fascinating. I find this very fascinating to see what you think are the most important research topics. But we're going to get to the Q&A. Thank you, Dr. Joshi. I agree with you. The Slido platform is very helpful. So there are a couple of people that are putting questions there that relate to how do they get a certificate of attendance. While we're waiting, let me mention this. So you will qualify to receive a certificate of attendance, which you must ask for. We're not going to do it by default. You must ask for it, but you only qualify if you've attended each of the 3 days sessions on days 1 and 2 for at least 2 hours for about 80 or 90% of each day, each of the 3 days. So you're not going to get a certificate if you only attended day 1 or day 2 or day 3. You need to have attended the full 3-day series for a substantial amount of time. Then we will issue you with a certificate of attendance. It's like, you know, going to university, if you only attended 1 year out of the three-year degree course, The university is not going to issue you with a degree certificate. Only if you attended the full 3-day event for most of the time will you be issued a certificate. But you need to send us a little email, please, and specifically a request for that. Because what we then have to do is we take your name and go to the Zoom table, Zoom platform, and check to see how many minutes did you attend on each day. So Zoom tells us for each participant, how many minutes did you attend on each day? And based on that, we can make a decision whether you would qualify for a certificate. I'm sorry, it's just, it's how we deal with many different requests for a certificate. And to add value to the certificate, we have to make sure that people actually deserve to get the certificate. Thank you for your understanding. All right, let's look at the pattern that's emerging. Top priority seems to be impact of climate and environmental changes on mosquito populations and the extent of malaria transmission. Wonderful. I think that's absolutely great. So somebody to go and do a study on, how is the changing climate and the associated environmental changes, how is it impacting vector populations, and in turn, then how does it impact on disease burden? So somebody to do, or some groups to research that aspect. Number two, second priority, data integration between climate and malaria programs to support planning, surveillance, and early warning systems. Sorry, I'm being distracted by messages coming in. Data integration between climate and malaria programs to support planning, surveillance. Okay, let's take heed of that. Priority number 3, new technology for vector-borne disease prevention. In particular, presumably in relation to, the example that Dr. Mukhtar showed us in Pakistan. These extreme weather events or climate changes impact on our historic traditional way how we implement vector control or disease control. And we need to take into account what happens when these extreme events occur. What impacts does it have on our routine surveillance and control interventions? And how do we compensate? How do we adapt? What should we be doing to address these impacts that such climate change events have on us? So just look at a couple more. Number 4 was efficacy of vector control measures in changing climates. I've just touched on that basically. The use of remote sensing data, satellites and drones to monitor vector habitats and malaria risks. Very good point, important point. Number 5, zoonotic malaria changes due to climate. Number 6 got lost somewhere along the way, but we jumped to number 7, malaria impacts of climate mitigation strategies. And so it goes on. I think there are about 14 of those. So we can make these available. They're very important findings that guide us how we should be thinking based on the expert input from you, our vector community. So sincere thank you to all of us, from all of us, for your efforts to help us think how APMEN, for example, should be thinking about identifying projects and perhaps providing a little bit of seed funding with some research or reviews and so on. Thank you. Kimberly, back to you.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much. It's great to see all the research topics that have come up. So I think we have a little bit of time left to do the Q&A. If the speakers could turn on their cameras. And we will try to get through some of these questions. We probably won't answer all, but hopefully we can follow up afterwards. So I believe the first, is Dr. Marjenda there, or Dr. Singh? Okay, maybe I will skip the question for him. For Dr. Mukhtar, a question for you. Is there a multi-sector coordination mechanism established in Pakistan specifically for the collaboration and coordination of malaria-related activities? And how do you involve other sectors or stakeholders to discuss and strategize on malaria prevention and control efforts?
And thank you, Kimberly, for this very nice question. Yes, we have the different forums, particularly after this flood event. We have a very big event a forum that the Partner Development Coordination Forum, where all the international partners are the member of that forum, which is actually meant for their strategy to see what is their planning for next year and what is their not performance, what they have done in the previous year. Actually, in my presentation, I also mentioned that every partner was doing a wonderful job. They did a great job during this climate change, this disaster, but there was just some lack of coordination, due to which there was some duplication of resources. There's some other activities which are needed in this particular area, but it was not done in that particular area. Then that's why, keeping with this lesson learned, we have a development partner coordination forum to bring all the international partner, national, international partner on one forum to see that their activities last year during 2020, and then what is their planning for next year, so that every partner should sit together on one table, share their experience as well their planning for next year. And we have also another forum, that is a technical working group, that is actually technical working group, but there is another for TACOM, Technical Advisory Committee on Malaria, which have the representation from all these sectors, different ministries: Ministry of Climate Change, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Railways, and Ministry of Communication. So we have all these, and there was also impact of this coordination. But for this year, we have at least for this year, if God forbid there is another natural disaster, we have something planning in our pocket. We have all the partner on board, that what they have planning, and the partner are also approaching the program to see what is the need of the program. So we have very good coordination, and this is one of the best lesson learned from this 2022 flood in Pakistan. Over.
Excellent. I think that's a really valuable lesson learned, and also a really inspiring model for a lot of groups to think about how to take on. I don't know if any of the other panelists, so maybe Dr. Cruz, if you've kind of had any experience working on these multi-sector panels and thinking about disaster management.
I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Just as a follow-on, have you had any kind of experience with coordinating with different agencies and thinking about how to make sure that climate information can be used by different groups for disaster management or response?
Well, in our experience, it is more on the long-term planning. So we do have these meetings involving the different groups, because what would be important is to understand clearly what would be the need, and what is the context of each user, because it really differs from place to place and from sector to sector. So it's important to really spend the time to talk, be familiar with each other's languages in a way, and jargons. So because we do have our own way of doing things, our own approaches, and so yeah, it really helps to spend time in having these conversations, and also asking questions with each other, so that we really understand the local, and be specific with for example, what data will be needed. If for example, they will have a specific need. So on the climate side, it will help that we can tailor fit the information to address what they need.
Excellent. No, thank you very much. And Emily, I might just see if you have any thoughts, because I know that was something you touched on in your presentation about thinking about those methods of coordination or how to align.
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting point and something that came up a lot in sort of recent review of operationalizing early warning systems, is that particularly data sharing and sort of collaborative links between the climate and health sectors can be a big barrier. And some of the recommendations around that we mentioned are things like memorandum of understanding, sort of in advance of these projects being started, to really enable that collaboration to sort of continue. But I think it's a really important part of the process, and also just for the, in terms of early warning systems, for the epidemiologist to fully understand the climate data that's available, and the nuances around that, and sort of the other way around, I think is so valuable to design an effective system.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much. And just on the theme of communication, I have a question for Dr. Singh. About whether or not you had a really innovative communication strategy in engaging a lot of the local communities and thinking about how to reach out. So have you also kind of thought about how to evaluate that is, in terms of how effective your communication strategy is in reaching your audience and achieving the goals? Or do you have any lessons learned on communicating maybe more with the public than in general?
Yeah, actually in India, most of the malarious region is tribal dominant region. The malaria is confined in the tribal in the rural area. I'm not talking about the urban area. Urban area has the different problem. But in India, most of the malarious area is tribal communities, and tribal communities, their health-seeking behavior, their cultural practices, their taboos, these all contributing getting the risk of malarial infection. They have poor health. There is poor health infrastructure. So we emphasize to motivate them, to mobilize them, to change their behavior for based health seeking practices. For this, actually, we have developed a model, and we engage the school childrens as a peer person in this community. And when we sensitize to the childrens, they just move, when they return back to the home, they spread our message in the community very significantly. And tribals gathering in the weekly market or some their cultural festivals. And that point, we demonstrated we applied several tools to demonstrate the based health-seeking practices, to improve their health-seeking practices, how they can get better treatment from the available health facilities. In the next step, we improve the quality of health services so that we can build trust in the community. If the quality of health service delivery improve, they can use this health facilities. They build the trust against them, right? So these 2-3 points we have taken in our consideration. For example, when the IRS program working in the district earlier, before starting our study, we found that most of the persons refused to spread the house, because they usually tribal community have single room structure, their houses. Their sleeping and cooking place is same. And they keep their food stuffs in that room. And there is a conception. They think that with the spraying the insecticide, their food stuff may spoil. And I found that IRS staff did not give proper time to protect them. And they are visiting the house for a spray without prior intimation. So these are some small hurdles, the small facts there we found there, and we solve each and every problems locally. And after that, we get a optimal coverage and community acceptance of the program. Thank you.
Excellent. No, it's a really exciting and very innovative way to engage the community. So it's great to see the impact. I think next I have a question for everyone. So maybe Dr. Mukhtar, I'll point you to start. So the question is, what are the global views on making malaria control and elimination a focus of climate change adaptation? So I think it would be interesting to think about how well we're integrating malaria with climate adaptation from both the malaria point of view, but also from the climate point of view. So any thoughts on how we kind of bring these programs together?
Yeah, thank you very much for this nice question. And WHO has also shared some documents which are integrating or highlighting the climate change and malaria incidence and in the growing incidence of malaria in different countries. And the example of Pakistan has also been used that so that's why the climate change is no part and parcel of the many countries' strategy that globally as well as at the country level. Even in Pakistan, when we develop our strategic plan for 2023 to 2026, based on our experience, the climate change was one of the key indicator for this. And in Pakistan also, we have a full-fledged climate change ministry. So we are not only focusing as a program, but there is a full-fledged Ministry of Climate Change in Pakistan, which is actually working on the impact of climate change on different health emergencies. And globally, as I mentioned, that the WHO has also recently shared some documents which indicate what is the role of the climate change and the rising trend of the malaria and how we can mitigate. And the WHO also encouraged the countries that they should also have a country-specific planning to mitigate the climate change, which we did in Pakistan.
Excellent. Are there any other thoughts from any of the other speakers? Or happy for Dr. Mukhtar? I think that was a really comprehensive answer. I have a few technical questions. So one for Dr. Cruz. How do some of the projections that you've described differ from global climate models in terms of scale and detail? And a second question is, what are some of the potential impacts of these climate change on other sectors, such as agriculture, water resources, and biodiversity in the region?
Thank you very much for the question. So yes, so from the global climate models, what we do is, as I mentioned, was to downscale that. So there could be some ways of doing it by using another regional climate model or through the statistical downscaling. So what we would expect is that there may be some changes in the detail of the climate changes that we see. Specifically, if these were over areas where you will have a very complex topography that because your terrain, the kind of terrain that you have or the land use that you have would have an impact on the climate or the temperature and rainfall locally, which may not be clearly seen in the global models because of just the difference in the resolution. Another example could be that if you are more concerned with an island, because in the global models, it's possible that it is seen as an ocean. It's not a landmass. And so with the regional climate models, you're able to get some more detail on the information for these small islands. As for the climate impact for the other sectors, so it's a really complicated question, which also emphasized why when I meant earlier that it's really important that the climate researchers get together with the different impact sectors, because for sure there will be a different interest, or for example a different concern that is or climate variable that is needed by these different sectors. So an example would be to come up with climate indices. So if, for example, you're more concerned with a particular temperature where it is more conducive for mosquitoes to breed, and so we could look back into the climate, the projections of the temperature, and see whether are these thresholds being exceeded more often, or if you are even getting higher values, and in combination also with other climate variables such as rainfall, if it's going to be more intense, or there are going to be changes in the timing. So there's a lot of other questions that I'm sure will come up. And so it's really important to have this dialogue. I hope that helps. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I think, Emily, I had a question for you. So there was a comment that early warning systems for dengue and malaria may be implemented and used to monitor Aedes and Anopheles vector breeding potential. Usually, I'll paraphrase, usually using routine kind of seasonal climate projections or maybe weather data. What are your thoughts on the ability to adapt these models, or how you would forecast using longer term climate change projections? So some of the ones that Dr. Cruz just mentioned.
Thank you for the question. I think it's a really interesting area, and there's definitely work being done on this. One kind of important consideration when you move from using like lagged weather data in a forecasting framework to forecasts, whether they're just seasonal forecasts or longer term forecasts, is how you then incorporate that additional uncertainty. And past work has done this by sort of drawing from a distribution of what you think the climate patterns might be like, and then running the model in different scenarios so that you can capture that extra uncertainty. So yes, I mean for longer term projections, that's also possible. But obviously there's the sort of precision of what you're trying to estimate. You might be interested in a different output. You might be interested more generally in how the case distribution is going to change, or how the burden is going to change, rather than a more short-term forecast where you're really concerned about, when exactly is an outbreak threshold going to be reached, or what exactly are the caseloads that we can expect in sort of coming weeks, months. So yes, I think those are my key thoughts would be how to incorporate that additional uncertainty, and then also how, the sort of outcomes of interest change.
Excellent. No, thank you very much for that. I think those are really useful thoughts. I just have an additional question for Dr. Mukhtar that is very close to both of our hearts. What about using drones for vector surveillance? And could you use them to apply larvicides? How does that fit into this context of environmental change?
Thank you for this question. Yes, we have very recently the pilot project to the support of the UNICEF Pakistan office, and when we use this drone on a very big project for the vector surveillance and the application of the larvicide. In actually, drones are mainly used for those areas or breeding sites which are normally not accessible routinely. So that's why we are using this drone. We are promoting, and we did a very good pilot project in Pakistan, the use of the drone for the vector surveillance as well as for the application of the insecticide. Primarily we use this in this pilot project and BTI for the application of inaccessible areas, which is normally not accessible, but they are playing a very big role in the breeding of Aedes mosquitoes. For future, yes, we are also in touch with some partners, and partners are particularly UNICEF is very much interested to promote this project for other activities like the use of the drone in the flood affected areas. I just give you the example, very good example. There are a lot of relief commodities were standing on the road, but it was not possible to go to the affected community just because of the water. So keeping with these experiences, we are also planning with the help of our partners that drone can also be used, other than mosquito control, they can also be used as for delivery of the health services package for to the affected communities. So apart from the vector surveillance and control, there are some other plannings also now in countries, keeping in view our successful model of the pilot project of the use of drone for vector surveillance and control. So I think this is the answer. If you need some additional information, I can discuss. And the person who can ask this question, just send it through email. I can send all the information related to our data for surveillance as well as for the control and application use of the insecticide for this drone. But future, the drone has a very big future for the use, particularly during the humanitarian emergencies. Over.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. I think there's a real opportunity to include new technologies. So not just data, but thinking about other technologies that we could use to deliver response. And I think one thing that's come out of all of the presentations, which is really, really important, is actually thinking about not just the effects on the vector itself, but on the delivery of vector control. So I think that's something as a community we probably haven't looked at as much. So if a road is flooded, we probably can't get in. You know, what are the mosquito nets to use? How do we better even think about some of the climate information that we could use to identify these areas or kind of respond to these risks? Just in the interest of time, because I know we're running a little bit over, maybe we could ask all of the speakers to give, if you have some final thoughts, either kind of key lessons or research priorities that you'd like to share. And Leo as well, I'll invite you, but we could start with Dr. Singh as the first speaker.
Yes. I'm okay. I can't say anything no more. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, excellent. Well, I think we took a lot of lessons from your presentation about the kind of effectiveness of these public-private partnerships and particularly community engagement.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Dr. Mukhtar, any thoughts?
Yes, of course, the partnership, which I already explained, when we are talk about the partnership, it doesn't limit to only the top level of our, like the policymaker or the partners. The partnership with the communities, because until and unless the community is not on board, your intervention, because the intervention is intervention when it is accepted by the community. That's why you must have a very strong partnership with the communities for better acceptance of your intervention. Just to give the example of the mosquito net, we provided the 100% communities to the 100% communities were provided the bed net during this flood. But unfortunately, due to certain reason, they can't use it technically, they can't use it some other issues. So that's why we then start communicating with the communities. Yes, this is the only intervention currently we have in our pocket. And unless you will not use it when you will go back to your home, the malaria situation. So this is just the example, but the main point is the partnership, not with the donor, not with the international partner, not with the ministries, but partnership with the communities. Until unless community is not on board, your intervention will not work. So this is just a key message from my side.
Yeah, excellent. I think it's a really important message. Dr. Cruz, any kind of final thoughts?
Well, I just wanted to thank you again for the invitation. It was very interesting to listen to all the presentations and also the feedback and questions. And I just wanted to say that we will continue to work in producing this climate information, but we also hope to explore, potential collaborations in the future in making sure that this information that we are producing is hopefully be used in these studies. we expect that climate extremes will become more extreme in the future, but as we work towards reducing our emissions, we can still work on also adaptation and also in better responding to this future hazard. So there's still something that we can do. So that's just what I wanted to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I do think it's a really important step to actually just to understand more about what the kind of climate modeling community is doing, and to have these dialogues where I guess it is getting people at the same table and trying to learn the different languages. So it's really helpful. Dr. Finch?
Yeah, I think my thoughts were relatively similar. It's just been so fascinating to hear more from the climate services, climate modeling side, and also from the vector control side, and sort of coming from a modeling perspective. It's really helpful to actually sort of understand all those different perspectives and the different questions, and I think sort of working more closely between these different sectors and with different partners will hopefully allow for sort of more interesting and useful work in terms of climate change adaptation.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So thank you so much. I'd just like to take the time as well just to thank all of our speakers. We really appreciate the time that you put into the presentations, and I think this was a really useful session. And thank you for everyone who has joined for quite a long session. I don't know, Dr. Mukhtar or Leo, any final thoughts from your side as the chairs of the working group?
Dr. Mukhtar, would you like to go ahead?
Yes. Thank you very much. First of all, my very big thanks to all the participants who spared their time for a long time, for 3 days. And so thank you very much, all the people, for young students, and there are some program managers and some other people from different part of the world, from Africa, Europe. Everybody was there, and we are extremely thankful for their very good partnership. And we are also thankful for those people who ask the questions, which mean that they listen to the presentation and they raise some questions, and we are very special thankful. And top of that, all thanks to all the presenters for 3 days, for all people who make a wonderful presentation. They shared with us their thoughts, which experience, which definitely give us a wonderful lesson learned for future working, to make this working group more and more active and productive to serve the communities, to achieve our goal of elimination, not only Asia, but across the globe. Because somebody yesterday asked the question about the other countries. Yes, the APMEN Vector Control Working Group is very open working group. We warmly welcome to all the countries, because they showed day one there were 59 countries. Yesterday there were 60 countries, which means that we have the participation from different part of the world, which is really encouraging for us. And definitely we as a Vector Control Working Group, APMEN Vector Control Working Group, will try our level best to provide our technical assistance to any part of the world to achieve their goal of elimination, to achieve their goal of control. So my wonderful thanks, very special thanks to all the presenters, all the participants, panelists, and on top of that, Dr. Liu for a lot of taking the lead of all this working, and Dr. Kimberly for and the participant and all the presenters today, yesterday, and day before yesterday. Thank you very much, all of you, for your wonderful presentation, wonderful thoughts, wonderful experience, and definitely we learned a lot from your presentation. Thank you very much, all of you. Yes, Dr. Liu, please.
Yeah, I thank you, Dr. Mukhtar. I absolutely echo what you said. The great big thank you to our audience, to our presenters. I'd also like to thank Dr. Porn, Dr. Popoong, and Wulan for working in the background to ensure that the technical aspects were addressed. But most of all, our audience and our presenters. What a wonderful session. And the degree of interest reflects the recognition and realization that we don't know enough within the vector control community about issues around climate change. And there's a strong interest to learn more. And as Dr. Mukhtar pointed out, to integrate climate change, environmental responses into our strategic planning. And Dr. P.T. Joshi made the point in the comments box as well. It's not just, we mustn't stare ourselves blind in higher rainfall and so on. It's also droughts. Droughts also promote certain vector species that breed in small pools as streams shrink and so on, or sandflies that prefer drier environments. So it's all aspects, whether it's higher precipitation, lower precipitation, warming that allows greater geographic spread. And we're seeing more and more of these publications emerging on how climate change is affecting the distribution of, interestingly, Aedes into Europe and other places, and also Anopheles into the higher elevations of mountains and so on. So Kimberly, I think from all of us, we encourage you to create more opportunities for climate-related reviews, presentations, webinars. We're keen, we're thirsty for the information that you and your group of climate specialists can offer us to learn how we can better design and implement vector surveillance and response. To everyone, sincere thank you. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for a great job facilitating, Kimberly.
Thank you very much. And I would just
Definitely.
add, I think the learning goes both ways. So it's been great to kind of to hear all of these different experiences and try and pull them together. So looking forward to many future conferences and meetings. And thank you everyone again.
Echo that 100%.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you. Have a very good day.